Digibajitunda. All on day, the one that fits ya. Katikin Digibajitunda. All on day, the one that fits.
Hi everyone, welcome to the Nile Book Club, where we focus on African-centric literature. And this month we're reading One for Sorrow, Two for Joy by Marie-Claire Amuah.
Possibly Amuah.
Amuah.
Yeah. I hope. So yeah, One for Sorrow, Two for Joy. Reads like I guess it's part memoir, maybe, possibly, but I'm not going to call it that. But it follows young Stella from her own perspective, a first-person narrative, as she charts a very tumultuous childhood and possibly an even more tumultuous adulthood, but how she manages to go beyond that and survive some really traumatic experiences. So yeah, that's really, I was a bit worried to say it's a memoir because we're hoping to speak to the author, and we don't want to then ask her, what inspired it? It's like, it's just a made up story, made up. But it did read like it read so personal that I was thinking this has to be real. But maybe it's because it's from the first person narrative that made me think that. But we'll do what we usually do. We'll go straight to you, Gitasi, with your opinion.
Okay. First of all, I want to shout out One World for sending us an advance copy of this.
Right.
Yeah. I really enjoyed this book, and I felt like I was just captivated by Stella, I started reading it on and off, and then when I went away for the weekend, I just had time and I just got into it. And it's July the 17th and we're meeting way earlier than we normally would. So I was committed to her story and finding out what happened to her, and I just enjoyed how it was written and the evolution of Stella from like childhood to adulthood. And my initial thoughts were that Stella reminded me of Darling from No Violet Bulawayo's We Need New Names. And I think it's a really interesting way to present matters and listen to like a child's point of view, because the stuff is just so raw and unfiltered. And it's when Stella's experiencing life, she's just telling it as it is. There's no sort of analysis. It's just, this is what happened. And I think you're left as a reader to just have your own emotions and decipher it for yourself. And also, I love books that are about London. I love that it was hyper local in the sense that it was just really about Brixton. And I've walked that strip so many times that she describes. I've had like my hair done in Brixton. I mean, I go there to get things done. Like Brixton is it's a very transient place. So I could just picture everything that she was describing, Morley's. So I liked how hyper local it was. And I just think these books about London are really powerful because I could just see my life in various stages and the friendships and Stella's for even like more personal reasons. And also it reminded me of Bernardine Evaristo's Girl, Woman, Other, just the various women and like Stella's own journey and just being able to identify with London life in a book. So generally speaking, yeah, that's quite a lot. I'll stop there.
No. I usually give the long monologue, so I think it was nice. It was nice and refreshing to be on the receiving end of one. I think it's great. Yeah, you know what? I was a bit like you as well in that I just picked it up because, of course we were going to talk about it, but we had a long time to go before we were going to meet initially. And part of the reason why, if any of our members are watching this and they're thinking, how come I didn't get the link sent to me this time? And even if I usually don't turn up anyway, it's because, like we said, it was an advanced copy. And in fact, it was a proof copy. So it's going to be different to the final version. And I think there might have been a few little things that she's probably going to change. But yeah, like yourself, I devoured it. Like, I know this is such a cliche word that kind of readers always use, but I devoured it. And I had a lot of time as well, because I started rehearsal for a play, and I was on the train, I would just be reading it back and forth, and I would just go through it like it was nothing. Not that it was nothing, but I would go through it like I was invested in her life as well. And I loved how she started with Stella, you know, from the perspective of an 8-year-old, just the language, the sentence structure, the naivety. And then I was thinking, oh, please tell me you're going to masterfully do this transition into teenagehood and then adulthood as well. And she did it brilliantly. So yeah, so I really enjoyed it. It did, of course, also remind me slightly of Open Water. And I kind of like, I'm going to contradict myself from like the kind of stuff I said. If you've been watching, if you haven't watched the episode of Open Water, go back to the Open Water episode I'm watching here, my opinion specifically on the book. But I'm contradicting myself in that, yes, it was local. This book, as in One for Sorrow, is local, but it was some reason I didn't feel like she was trying to make it for like everyone. Like she picked the lane with Brixton, and she knew Brixton so well that I too could see Brixton. Spend many years of my childhood going to Brixton. It's not too far from Battersea, so we used to go there as teenagers. And I can see this world. I can see Brixton Hill. I can imagine the bus she was from, the shops and everything, Electric Avenue. So, but it didn't feel. It was a contrast to Open Water in that it wasn't like, oh, we go to Peckham and then we go to Battersea and then we go to Chelsea and then we go to Islington. Like the most specific she was actually doing when she was in Brixton, and I felt like that was for a reason. And in fact, even the cover has London or a version of Brixton or an animated version of it. So I think Brixton was like almost like another main character, at least South London, and I liked it for that, And maybe I didn't feel like the story was so personal that it didn't feel like she was trying to engage me as a reader. I think that's what we were talking about before. The fact that she did it as a first person narrative, I was able to find more. I found it more authentic than if she turned around and said, "You walk around Brixton and you feel as though." Do you know what I mean? Like that for me was actually the issue I had with Open Water. It's like it was almost what Marie-Claire did was she was willing to be vulnerable. She was, maybe that was the point of Open Water, that lack of like willingness to be vulnerable, but she was willing to be vulnerable and put her life on the line, or at least this particular story, by saying, I did this, I do this, I go through this, I travel to this place, I miss Christian, he does this to me. And I was like, wow, I was really, really engaged in that. There wasn't a cop-out that second person narratives can have, if I'm being honest. So I really enjoyed it. I went through, I was like, this is the quickest I've ever read a book. Like I was like, I could squeeze into, in fact, I started reading another book, a non-fiction, straight after. I was like, I got to read something else because I've done my book for the month. I got to get something else onto the board. But yeah.
I hear that. Let me just pause and think about what you said. Maybe we should read other second person narratives to compare our previous experience with Open Water. But I think I like what you said around Brixton taking on its own character, and because it was repetitive, because she's describing her childhood, and childhood, there's routine. You go to school, you come back from school. So it was nice to have that familiarity in terms of, we're back at that place again. We're back outside Morley's, or, she's gone to Brixton Market. It became familiar. And I think it really helped with the world building. And maybe because she's staying true to herself, like Marie-Claire is, she's like on the board for the Black Culture Archives, which are located in Brixton. And with very little information that's available about her online, she calls herself a South Londoner. So I think she stayed true to that, and that aspect came out in her writing.
I might have met her before. Her face looks so familiar. I might have met her before when I went to the Black cultural archives once upon a time. Maybe, I don't know. But she looks so familiar. And I don't know about you. Do you save this part for the end of the book, or do you go quickly and read about them and then read the book?
No, I'd done all of that even before I put a request in.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I sometimes don't even want to read the blurb. I just want to like discover it. And I kept kind of catching a glimpse of her picture, and I'm thinking, no, I don't want to see that yet. I don't want to imagine how Stella looks like yet. I don't want to also know about the acknowledgements of the story. I just want to go through it and see. And I'm glad I did, actually, because man, don't you think it was, do you remember that book? And the author ended up going to prison. Remember that Constance Briscoe? You remember that book, Ugly? I think it was called Ugly. Like it was her memoir, and it turned, she went through a lot of almost Stella-esque experiences, and then she became like a barrister or something. But then later on, something happened. Yeah, it's called Ugly by Constance Briscoe, and something happened in that, and she ended up. I'll do the research. Maybe there was a crazy story about her. Let me see if we can do it, because I know.
So did it remind you of this?
Yeah. No, when I was reading it, it didn't remind me of it. But now, when I was talking about it, now I thought, oh wow, like it reminded me of Constance Briscoe. And she was jailed for 16 months for lying to police.
Right, we had to come back to Constance.
We'd have to come back to that, but okay, so oh no, my mom's calling me. I'm gonna have to tell her that I can't talk right now. Questions. Did you have any burning kind of like?
Do I have any burning questions? Well, I mean, it's difficult when we both agree in a book, isn't it? Because when we're just going to say, yeah. We needed someone like James who's like, this book was actually rubbish.
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
For balance. But it's more, I mean, questions, I guess. Do you recall like Stella ever naming her father's name, like saying her father's name? Because to me, he remained nameless.
Yes, I know the last name was Sai.
Yeah, that's the surname.
Oh, wasn't he a senior? Wasn't the Soul a junior?
Oh, yes. Okay.
I think so, because I think Solomon was a
junior? Yeah, okay.
Do you remember that? I'm getting flashes of
I remember that. So, because I just wondered why she didn't really ever refer to him like with his name. And I wondered if there was any sort of any reason for that, but maybe we'll ask her that. But
this is great, actually. We can actually any problem we have, we can just say, we'll ask the author that.
Okay, ask her that, yeah. But I guess more significantly is trying to understand her father's motivations and why he hated her, like why he treated her the way that he did, and did you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I did, again, it's a bit like nervous conditions with Nyasha, and dad's kind of always feeling, I guess maybe it's a sense of ownership with their daughters, where it's like, I guess maybe they don't want them to behave a particular. They feel, I guess that I'm talking perspective of the dads in those two books, where they're like, you have to be. There was expectations of how the daughter should behave, and if the daughter didn't meet those expectations, there was this kind of feeling like, how dare you disrespect me, with the dad in regards to Nyasha and her behavior, and then again. Stella's dad feeling like she was such a young girl, but she was so insolent. He kept referring to her as being insolent. Is that the word? Is that how you pronounce it? Insolent?
Insolent. But that's how the dad would say it. Insolent.
Insolent. Insolent. But his motivation, going back to his motivation, I mean, it feels like he was definitely subconsciously acting out the effects of his own trauma. Like, I guess those are the people that are into psychology will say that he experienced terrible abuse at a very young age, and he was probably, he couldn't act it out on anyone else, couldn't act it out on his mother. So he decided to act it out on the next available women in his life when he became strong enough and old enough, and that's the daughter and the mother. So really and truly, I think that's the main, I guess, that's the subconscious maybe driving force of him being so abusive to his wife and his daughter. You could say as well, like, by Stella's own admission, with the older she got, she was very, very a difficult person. She had this beast inside of her. She misbehaved even towards her mother. And I think maybe if her mother was that way inclined, she probably would have attacked her as well. So maybe the dad saw something in her that was like really triggered this kind of powder keg that always made him really angry. And of course, not to victim blame her, but by Stella's own admission, of course, she was but there should never be an excuse to like attack any young person or any person but if I was to kind of look at all the little pieces, I would see that, there was something that sparked that anger out of the dad in a way that Solomon never did, actually. So there are dads that assault their sons because their sons are just so disrespectful and they feel like they're justified to do so. Whereas Solomon wasn't that kind of person. He just would sit back. I will say as well, because I was going to ask you actually, do you think Stella was right to kind of blame Solomon for such a long time and for not sticking up for her when he was only a child himself?
That's a good question. I also battled with that. And I think Marie-Claire presents the complexity of domestic violence and how it affects everyone in the household differently. No, I mean, I think that there's no right or wrong answer. Like, this is a murky area, and that's what it's meant to be. That's the intention. I kind of felt like he was just benefiting from the patriarchy, from his childhood, like his father's love for him, and him not having encountered experiencing the life that Stella did. He was able to thrive far more than she did because he was a boy. I mean, I've grown up I grew up alone, so I don't have comparisons really with siblings. But it was interesting to see how they had a completely different experience, but they lived in the same household. I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I've got 2 sisters and 2 brothers. So, I mean, there was pressure for me to, as the eldest, to kind of lead by example. And, my mom was the main disciplinarian. She was the one, if we were to say, who was the one that kind of carried out the punishments. It would be our mom's and our mom rather. And her reason, I guess, I think the thing that would trigger her to kind of carry out this punishment was, I was probably being a very difficult, not even probably, I was being a very difficult child who could have ended up in not so good life, actually. I probably would have gone, the stereotypical kind of Black boy in London kind of experience, had my mom not kind of been that tough mother. But I think if that's carried out, but in comparison to, say, my sisters, they didn't really have that as much. But the point I guess I'm making is it depends on what the parents see, maybe the possible journey that this child is gonna go down, because it's so controversial what I'm saying, because I'm almost it sounds like I'm advocating for kind of disciplining your child physically, because I'm not a parent, so I don't know that attachment of, parent to child, but I just know that had my mom not been so strict and disciplined us, I know that we wouldn't be where we are with various successful things we're doing, right? And nowadays, you can't even critique a young person without them saying you're being mean to them, right? So sometimes that gives them license to behave a particular way because they know there's no repercussions. There was a time where if you didn't come back at a particular time, it might not even be because you're going to get beat. It might be because you're going to get shouted at. And that in itself was enough of a reason to behave. And maybe, I guess, to go back to the point is that maybe the dad felt like he had this responsibility to, discipline the daughter because of the fact that he felt like if he doesn't do that, she's going to go off and become an even more difficult person outside of the household. He was wrong, absolutely wrong to do that. But again, we never found out his reason as well. She never got to speak to him and ask him. That was frustrating in itself, actually. I think if she had confronted him in a similar way, she kind of semi-confronted Saul, we could have found his reason. Now we're just basically making up reasons for him. But I'm just trying to see from his point of view, which of course was absolutely wrong. But of course, raising children can't be easy. You as a parent,
as a parent. I mean, I don't think that line or that thread is like consistent with a dad's character. He was like excessively violent, and he didn't want to pay his school fees on time. He favored the boy child. He got preferential treatment and everything. So I don't think it was discipline. And when she did have her moments of rage, like lashing out because her mother was late or whatever, those were all symptoms of like her PTSD. So I just don't think that was discipline. That was something else. Like he was a monster. And I think what was interesting was, I'm just looking at, I felt really sorry for Stella because I felt like she was always living as her young self until she was able to start articulating what was happening to her. Even as she got older, it's just really towards the end that she started realizing that, oh my goodness, I have a problem. And then she saw the psychologist. Sorry, I know we probably have too many spoilers in here, but that's what we do. We talk about the books.
I mean, I feel like this thing is for people that have read the books.
I've read it, okay.
Yeah, you want to know what other people think. Like,
yeah.
And some people don't mind actually reading reviews before they read stuff. They don't mind. But yeah, sorry, everyone. There's probably a lot. We should put spoiler alert, but we just assume that this is for people that have read the books already.
Exactly. Thank you for that. I shan't hold back.
Yeah, then go all the way.
Go all out. Yeah, so it just felt like up until even her relationship with Christian, she was just living through the motions as she was as a child until she was finally able to articulate it when she actually sought like professional help. Yeah, so I thought that was interesting, and I just felt like secrets was a big theme in this book. In the sense that even though her friends were like everything to her, and they actually became her family more than her actual family did, I don't think they actually knew what was happening inside her home. Like there was always a shame. They never came back to her home. And I thought it reminded me of my own like childhood, because you sort of see your friends from the exterior, but you have no idea what's happening in like their in the nucleus. Everyone, like her father was holding the secret of the shame that happened to him. Her mother was holding the secret of being, she had two personas, like this home life and this external life. Just everyone was holding the secret. And I think that's a very African thing. Like let's not talk about our business, let's just contain it.
Yeah, but actually, there was another thing in regards to frustration, or something that kind of frustrated me a bit. I realized I wonder what did Stella, and I think it's probably very important to kind of point out that it's not to say that this is Marie-Claire's life, but the character of Claire, oh my God, Claire, yeah, Claire. But also,
Yeah.
I was about to bait myself up. But the character of Stella seemed like I wondered what did she bring to the table in regards to her friends, because it seemed like they were always kind of like making sure everyone was doing stuff for her. Like there was rarely any time where she went out and did stuff for her friends. Okay, she advocated for like strangers, for, you know, she was a barrister and stuff, but I'm struggling to think of moments where she actually went off to other people's house to say, is it Kemi's house, and helped her with her thing, because she had the same Addison thing as well. Or go when she went to Ireland, the only reason she went to Ireland was so she could heal. She didn't go to Ireland to visit her friend, you know, I forgot what her name was. Everything was always around her. Is that because she was the one that had the quote problem? Because her friends also had problems of their own, but it seemed like she didn't really contribute to help him. That's something I realized, like, you know, Saul was having his own issues as well. He was a young man witnessing his little sister getting abused. Like, you have to feel for him as well. But he was always, people always seeking out and reaching out for Stella, but she wasn't reciprocating some of this. And that kind of frustrated me a little bit. It made me think she was a little bit selfish type.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's just a tiny bit. I'm not gonna apologize for the opinion, but you know, it's just when I was reading, I was like, wow, like yes, you are. She has gone through a lot of things, but her, you know, her friends literally were always trying to lift her up, and I just struggle to think of a moment where she was helping reciprocate that, to reciprocate it.
Yeah, that's interesting. Maybe that was the point, that she was just too traumatized that she didn't have much to give. But then she did see herself as like the savior, the family savior.
Yeah, and she's a barrister. She advocated for loads of people, so she had that capacity in her. She reached out, or she would reply to Beverly's texts, and you know, she would go for the walk. So she had that capacity in her. But you know, you kind of start to think, wow, like, are you inviting some of these issues? When she got with Christian, I was like, this is the end. I knew immediately, even with that white don as well. When she got with that white don, I was like, yeah, this ain't gonna end well. He's just playing a part. And then when she met Christian, I was like, oh, yeah, this is not gonna end well. This is
Actually, let's talk about that. So I think Christian's a waste man.
Yes.
And I was just like, how did I not see this? Like, at which point did you realize, or did you sort of see, like, I'm not sure about this guy?
Well, she described him as like he was tall, like he was a big figure, but he spoke really softly. And I always think the soft speaking dons, sometimes they're covering, it's like there's a lid, you know, that something's bubbling, and that kind of soft speaking is a mechanism to kind of like keep that lid on, but eventually one day it will explode. Because if you are that size, right, usually people have always made you try to be a lot smaller. So you've gone through so many years of like having to make yourself smaller, because really and truly the average human being is not that. Like most dudes are my height, like realistically, right, or a little bit taller. So usually you have to make yourself a little bit smaller if you are. So eventually you're going to explode, especially once you start kind of letting your guard down. And when she kind of described him, and then, you know, I think when she said he did the video game part, when he spends the time playing video game and he doesn't like being interrupted, and I remember her kind of very passively and almost like a small bird, the way she described it's like, oh, you know, he doesn't like me interrupting him, you know, or he's looking for jobs, but he doesn't. I don't know how hard he's working to look for jobs. And there was that kind of little inclination of, yeah, he's going to be an F-boy with this, that just, you know, and then when that really, and even the fact that he felt as though because he cooked for her, he felt like that entitled him to kind of treat her a particular way. I was like, yeah, this guy it's not, you know, but I was happy that she got together with him. Like, you know, I was celebrating the black love, but I was like, yeah, this is not going to end well. But what did she see in him? What did she see in him? The bloody beef souffle, whatever he was making, could not have been that delicious. What did she see in this guy?
She just didn't want to be lonely. All her friends were paired up, you know. You know that life.
Oh, was Kemi's paired up?
She was probably wrapped up in her career and she loved it, you know.
Oh yeah, true. Is
Um,
that what we're getting to? Like, where it's that maybe I'm a dude in it, so I always think I've got options in it. So, is that a motivator? Obviously, you know, you're booed up, but like, is that a motivator for a lot of women where they're like, oh, I don't want to be alone. Let me just stick with this don right here. Yes, he pushes me down the stairs, but where else? There must be love. He's called me. Like she was, of course, you know. And again, I'm not trying to victim blame, but I just struggle to struggle to see what value he brought into her life beyond cooking for her, and that's why maybe she should have had that skill, so she wouldn't be so reliant on a dude.
This is true. I mean, we have to also remember, like you pointed out, we're talking about someone who has, like, she's acting on a subconscious level. She's replaying her own, like, her trauma and her experience with her father as she's selecting, like, these partners. Yes. They're absent, you know. Yeah. But you know, he on the surface, he ticked the credentials, you know, works in finance, good looking, you know, blah blah blah. Apparently, but
apparently.
Apparently.
There's no proof for that.
There's no proof, no.
There's no pictures in that, yeah.
There's no proof, but Christian, again, they were never honest with each other. Like, they never spoke about their childhoods and how traumatic. Like, he obviously went through some stuff. She never once, like, opened up to him and said, this is my stuff, or whatever, you know? And I thought that was really sad. Like, she was holding so much back, but she was so invested.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, it's a terrible thing to say I loved, but I love the link that Marie-Claire made with Stella and her mother and their experiences with their respective partners, when on page 11, she says, nobody knows that when my dad gets angry, it is like lightning and thunder and hailstones. And that very same phrase, she uses it, but attached to Christian. Nobody knows that when Christian gets angry. And I think that was and of course, it was quite clear, it was explicit the way, you know, she presented it.
Yeah.
But yeah, because she was becoming a mother, you know, a mother is able to go and be maternity, a neonate or prenatal
midwife nurse, yeah.
Yeah, but then goes home and she's like not able to stand up for herself, and then vice versa with Stella, barrister, but then she can't, you know. But then of course, what can, like, again, people's kind of choice of life decisions and choice of partners can sometimes get in the way. Like, if, you know, as a dude, for example, like, in fact, at this party that I went to, I was speaking to someone there, and she was saying that us dudes make us so stupid because you either choose a woman that will make you or you choose a woman that will break you. And a lot of times we as men choose a woman that will break us. And that's because we're not thinking, we're looking at the visual aspect of it. And I think Stella was a victim of that as well. The part that I don't remember the white guy's name, but the first dude's name. Colm.
I mean, these names I can't pronounce them.
Oh yeah, Colm.
Colm.
Yeah, something like that. Colm, like it was an Irish name or something like that. Yeah. So Colm first, and again, he had the image, the right image, you know, probably had the Rolex, and he had the nice apartment and all of that. And then Christian, again, he came, he looked a particular way, even the colorist kind of aspect, the fact that he was light skinned attracted her to him. Yeah, so she went for the man that broke her, as opposed to maybe even trying to maybe maintain that relationship she had when she was in sixth form with the young man. He sounded great. He sounded great, yeah. But we never we never explored that. That seemed that.
But again, that was because of her trauma. She couldn't trust anyone. She was just like, she had no example of like, her parents were not a good example of like relationships, and she was so guarded that she just couldn't trust herself with this person. So again, like I have a lot of sympathy for her. She's not operating from like a level-headed place. Like, this is a woman carrying so many things and on her own for so long. Like for 30 odd years, she's carrying all these burdens on her own and processing them in her head. Like, it's not surprising. Like, this is what happens when you come from dysfunction, I feel. Yeah, so like, she's not, I think let's go, I want to go easy on Stella and her choices and men. But I mean, I like the Osola.
What?
Taiwo, the guy that she met on the Nigerian guy. You don't remember the guy that basically said that? She was like, what do you do? He was like, I'm a hustler, but his accent was so heavy.
The 30, when she was like 20 and he was like 40, claiming to be 25 or something. And that guy.
Was he pretending to be, okay, his age? Yeah, him.
Yeah, he was pretending to be, yeah. Oh, you like that guy?
Yeah, I thought he was funny. I mean, it was a funny interaction. Like, you know, when you go on dates with people, like, it was so contemporary, you know, I really like that about it. It spoke to my generation, like the mentions of, so Solid Crew. That's probably my favorite chapter. Busted.
Yes. Oh, Busted. Do you like Busted?
I really like, no, Busted the chapter.
Oh, I thought you meant Busted the band.
No, absolutely not. Busted the chapter. No, when they go out and things unfold.
Oh yeah, she described that so brilliantly.
Yeah,
that was
and
great.
the bus journey back, you know, on the bus, and it's just London life.
That took you back to your rave days. That took you back.
Did it take me back? Yeah, it did. And that song doesn't get 21 seconds does not tire. Like
21 seconds, the best. It's the best. So many questionable. One questionable verse. You know that guy who goes worship the devil. That dude. So Solid.
Oh, yeah, him. What happened? Yeah. What was his name?
I don't know who that was, but he's definitely, no one raps that verse when it comes on. Actually, people do rap it.
No, I thought that was a little bit strange as well.
Yeah. So Solid Vampire.
But she didn't even pick up Lisa Mafia. You know, she was just saying, I am this person, I'm MC this. Lisa Mafia didn't get a mention.
Lisa Mafia didn't get that. Oh, really?
She didn't get mentioned in the book, but that's okay.
Who did she mention?
I'm Neutrino. Is it Neutrino?
Neutrino, yeah. Okay. Well, Neutrino didn't have a verse in 20.
No, wait. Now we have to go back, Kalonji.
But they were part of, Oxide and Neutrino were part of So Solid. But I feel like I'm So Solid. I'm not an expert, but they were Battersea Dons, innit? They're Battersea Dons. So we used to see some of them around the area growing up. Went to the same barbers as Harvey and Swift.
Oh, did you now?
Yeah. I used to, yeah.
I feel like we're gonna get into a, Southwest, which is best because she threw that line in there too,
Yeah. But to be fair, I'm Southwest, so I've always been kind of like I like West London because we were on just the cusp of it.
Yeah.
So it's not. I don't really get into that beef, to be honest with you. All I know is, no disrespect, we're better than Southeast. Is all I'm saying. We are much better than Woolwich and all those places. Much better because.
Oh, I have nothing to say about that.
Journeys are long. Those are journeys that it's like you're going to the journey to Nigeria because those journeys are long.
Those were my weekend getaways when I was a kid. I'm off to Croydon.
See, how can you have that? It's actually Croydon isn't. Maybe it would be far for you, but it wouldn't be far for me. But yeah, going to Woolwich and those kind of places is so long.
It's so different.
Yeah, but I loved the love letter to London. Yeah, it was South London specifically, and yeah, when she said, "Oh, going all the way to the north," is like it's just a mission for her, which is true. When I lived in North London, it's like it would take me ages to get into Central London on a bus. Like yeah.
I just wanted to say one last thing, maybe bring one other idea that I thought was really interesting or worth talking about. the comment that she makes about the London Black experience and how it's very different to living in other European countries as a Black person. And this is something I thought about so many times. Like, you know, when I go to Berlin and I see the Black people there, or when you see them in Paris or France or Spain, I'm always looking for the Black middle class, but they don't really sort of appear as much as they do. Like, I didn't see people that I related to just on the surface. And as she points out, Lisbon is one of those places where I thought like, oh yeah, I can see Black people here doing well. And they're probably Brazilian, you know, coming from, you know, affluent parts. But I thought that was a really interesting point. Like, our experiences would be very different if we were, say, like Black and living in Madrid.
Yeah, but yeah, when she said that line, it did make me. I've never been to Lisbon, but it did make me think. Oh, but Portugal has such a weird history with Africa. Like, they were the first people to kind of interact with Europeans, to interact with Africans in a kind of exploitative way.
100%. Yeah.
So when she said that, I was like, okay, like she was willing to live there. She picked that out as a standout city or country, and I was like, I don't know. It's a bit like I have a character in one of my plays that says they want to move to Italy, and my then agent was like, oh, that's interesting. They want to escape racism to move to Italy, but Italy is one of the most racist countries in Europe. And you're like, oh yeah, that's a fair point. But there's something. But the response I gave to my then agent was like, there's something about us as Africans or Black people where actually to escape to looking for a better life, sometimes we're willing to tolerate a particular type of racism under the kind of like maybe the or with the hope that that life will be much better. Like, okay, me, I'm a Black Brit. If I move to Italy, I'll end up thinking that I'll get special treatment because I'm not the kind of Black Italian. And similarly, again, with Black Brits that move to Black America, not Black America, that move to America, they get completely different, treatment because sometimes that's the case. And then again, if a Black Italian moves to the UK, they, people hear they're Italian and they're Black, they go, oh, wow, okay, that's interesting. And they treat them differently.
You're kind of exotic. I hear that.
Yeah. But it was something else that, again, talking about frustrations, was when she didn't take her Cambridge kind of visit seriously, and she didn't try to apply for Oxbridge or whatever. I don't know if it was Cambridge or Oxford or whatever. That was a bit of a unfortunate thing, because she was so intelligent, and she could have had, not to say Bristol isn't a good university, but she could have had a different experience had she maybe gone to Cambridge.
Yeah, it would have been, was it Oxford? I can't remember, one of the two. Yeah. I thought about that, but then it reminded me of a family friend I know who went to like a very posh girls' boarding school here, and she ended up going to like a regular university in the end. And I wondered why, because you come from this institution and that prepares you for the finest. But she just felt like it was just all too foreign, and she felt so isolated. She just wanted a sense of belonging, and stayed in a London university. But then I think that particular part highlighted being first gen and going to university, second generation rather, and going to university, and her aunties not being able to guide her because they didn't have the experience themselves, apart from the prestige. She regretted it, but you just didn't have anyone in your family to say, these are the consequences of choosing X, Y, Z. And I often think about that with my own family.
Yeah, maybe she wouldn't have had that kind of weird imposter kind of feeling had she spent 3 years in a university that, I think my understanding is, they sell to their students that you belong to and you are entitled to these big jobs. So if you go and get a big job in a big bank, you deserve to be there. So they walk this kind of the employment world with a little bit more confidence. Whereas when she went to Bristol, like, it was great, but I don't know if it just meant that when she then transitioned into being a lawyer, there was always this kind of tentative vibe about that. that she didn't have that confidence that I think she could have had she gone to, because I meet Black people that went to Cambridge, or people or Oxford or whatever, or so-called people of color, whatever, that went to Cambridge. And there's a confidence they have. They say, yeah, I want to. They say it with such great confidence. And there's that sense of entitlement, not in a bad way, but it's like, yeah, why am I going to do this job? I'm going to do this job because I went to this school, like, you know. And I feel like that could have maybe had a nice little impact on her maybe employment. And I think she didn't go straight into law first, did she? She did. What did she do? She studied
diplomacy in business or something.
Yeah. And
yeah. And interestingly, Marie-Claire didn't go to. I mean, I'm really curious. I can't wait to speak to her just to find out.
Oh, where she goes?
She studied languages or English and like French or something, and then went into this like the legal world.
Yeah, that's interesting. Very vicious.
But again, if you compare her to Saul again hadn't been battered. Yes, he experienced things, but he was very confident and he had so much clarity and he went for the best and he got it. You know, again, it comes down to, I think, your childhood makes a really big difference in your outlook on life.
Yeah, it does. And also the expectations that I think people have when it comes to you and your capabilities and your abilities. Because people had this belief in Saul. He could make everyone laugh. He was intelligent, he was charming and everything. So he did kind of walk the earth having that feeling. Whereas young Stella, there was always this feeling like you're sick, effectively, with the Addison illness. You know, you're an insolent young girl. You know, you see your mom being battered. You yourself have been battered. You've gone through this life. And also that compulsive thing that she had, which is, of course, is part of the title, was that irrational compulsive thing that she had. I think I found that frustrating because I was, as someone who's not majorly superstitious, I just couldn't relate to it because I just thought, how can you not go through your day because of something you can't control, it's a bird. Like what is, I've never been that, at least I say I've never been. I'm sure there's times where maybe with acting where I'm a little superstitious, but it just, it was a bit frustrating, the whole composer. And I'm kind of happy that through her therapist, she was able to figure that out because it was very irrational.
But that's the thing, isn't it? She had PTSD. So she was just trying to rationalize life as best as she could. And that was one of her compulsions, you know?
Yeah. You know what? It's coming up to an hour.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we've spoken at great length.
We have.
I know I probably speak for both of us, but really looking forward to speaking to Marie-Claire Amuah and just hearing her inspiration and asking us some of these questions. And those of you that are following us, oh, by the way, we're climbing in with our subscribers. We've got 31 now. 20 something, so we got 31 and we've got a new episode up. We've got 15 episodes as we're recording this, so the Kololo Hill one is up there on YouTube, and the Ugandan ones do really well for us, by the way.
Do they?
Yeah. The top one is We Are All Birds of Uganda. Then the next one is First Woman, Jennifer Nansuga Mukumbi, and then hopefully Kololo Hill will do bits for us. So so I just want to encourage those of you that do watch it to like and subscribe in it. Like, we're YouTubers now. I think this is just a brief moment to just say thank you and to encourage you guys to share and just follow us in this journey, because I think content creating is difficult, and I'm really glad that we've kept at it, because I know we could have, stopped. There's many moments where we would have stopped, but I'm glad we're still going with this. Yeah.
Persevering. Thank you, Kalamji.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So I'll stop recording and then continue on with Gambo.
All on day, the one that fits ya. Katigen Digibajitunda. All on day, the one that fits ya. Katigen Digibajitunda. All on day, the one that fits ya. Katigen Digibajitunda.